So shall we begin?
Yes.
Morning, one and all. Honorable dignitaries, our esteemed speaker, Dr. Mrudul Nile sir, respected principal, Professor Dr. S.V. Rathod, principals and academicians from various colleges, faculty members, students and participants from across the country. On behalf of Bharati Vidya Bhavan's Hazariman Somani College of Arts and Science and Jairam Das Patel College of Commerce and Management Studies, I, Dr. Kiran Jadhav, heartily welcome you all to this one-day webinar on the political and economic thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, organized by IQAC. As per the tradition, we begin all our programs with the Bhavan's prayer. May I request our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Mrs. Manjusha Patwardhan Madam, to kindly recite the Bhavan's prayer.
यत्किञ्च जगत्याः जगत् केन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथाः मा गृधक्कस्य स्विद्दनम् मूकं करोति वाचालम् पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिम् यत्कृपात्वमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् या कुन्देन्दुतुषारहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्कर प्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै शांति शांति शांति।
Thank you so much, Dr. Mrs. Manjusha Patwardhan, ma'am. Our IQAC has been conducting and organizing various activities throughout the year. The ongoing pandemic has made it mandatory to practice social distancing by staying at home. But the teaching fraternity is constantly striving to cater to the societal needs, the needs of the students, and thus engaging in online teaching learning activities. The accuracy of our institution, therefore, pays homage to all those nation builders who have steered the society and contributed to the nation building process. At this point, we recall the remarkable philosophy of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who, with his dynamic thoughts in fields like economics, sociology, politics, and so on, has molded the foundation of our society and nation at large. We at Bhavans salute the phenomenal contribution of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and earnestly feel that during this crisis, it is significant to spread positive impressions across the nation by deliberating on the political and economic thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This will definitely inspire the students and teaching fraternity to work hard and contribute towards the society. Our esteemed speaker will certainly inspire us to reflect on the political and economic thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Thank you so much. May I now request our respected principal, sir, Professor Dr. S. V. Rathod, to kindly address the participant. To principal, sir.
Good morning, one and all. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
On behalf of Bhavan Hazarimal Somani College of Arts and Science and Jairam Das Patel College of Commerce and Management Studies, I welcome you all for the national webinar. Honorable guest speaker for the day, Dr. Mrudul Nile, principals and vice principals of various colleges, teaching fraternity, students across the country. It is indeed an honor to host this webinar on very pertinent topic, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, political and economic views. As we all are aware, we are fighting a severe pandemic, COVID-19. India has declared already the lockdown period on 22nd March and 2 months are already over. The lockdown period will have a long-term impact not only on the economy of the nation, but it also affects the socio-political sphere. The lockdown has affected the weaker and marginalized sections of our society in more adverse manner. For example, people employed in the informal sector, migrant laborers, and poor are facing tremendous hardship. At this point, the accuracy of our college thought of recollecting the contribution made by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to the upliftment of the weaker sections of the society. We are grateful to Dr. Mrudul Nile, an eminent scholar, to have accepted our invitation to deliver a lecture today. I am sure that all of us will benefit for this enlightening session. I wish all the best to everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your valuable insights, and thank you so much for your support. We have important announcement here. Before we start, I am requesting every participants to kindly post your questions pertaining to the speech of Dr. Nuzul Nile, sir, our speaker, in the chat box. All the YouTube viewers are also requested to post their question in the chat box. May I now request Mr. Ravidas Gavit, sir, to introduce our esteemed speaker, Dr. Nuzul Nile, sir. Over to you, sir.
Ravidas, unmute yourself.
Ravidas sir, please unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself. Unmute
Audible?
yourself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kiran Jadhav, sir. Good morning, everyone. It is a great honor for me to introduce and welcome our esteemed speaker, Dr. Murdul Nile. Dr. Murdul Nile is currently a professor in the Department of Civics and Politics, University of Mumbai. He is on deputation on the State Election Commission, Maharashtra, and heads the Institute of Democracy and Election for Good Governance, a think tank for the State Election Commission. He coordinates an MA honors program in public policy. He is also a coordinator at Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar International Research Center for Social Justice. Dr. Murdul Nile was elected as a member of the Senate of the University of Mumbai from amongst the postgraduate teachers. He has also served as the Director, Student Welfare, University of Mumbai from March 2008 to September 2015. By virtue of being the DSW, he was also an ex officio member of various statutory committees like the Senate, Student Grievance Redressal Committee, to name a few. Dr. Nile was selected on a highest Fulbright scholarship sponsored by the US State Department to study national security policy making at the United States Institute on US national security policy making in the year 2011. He received a scholarship from ICSSR to go for a month-long international seminar on economic development for young scholars, Chinese Academy of Social Science, Beijing, People Republic of China. He was also a part of the think tank delegation to China in April 2016 and later a part of think tank forum between China and India, which was agreed upon by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping in December 2016, held in Delhi and Mumbai. Dr. Nile specializes in political process, political policy, public policy, and election studies. He has worked on a major research project sponsored by the Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR, entitled Governance of Health in Maharashtra, Implications for Social Exclusion, Government of Maharashtra. He is currently working on a major project sponsored by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of Maharashtra, entitled Mapping the Food Habits of Tribals in Maharashtra. He is closely associated with the Institute of Chinese Study, ICS, New Delhi. ICS is an autonomous body think tank sponsored by the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. He has to his credit two books, namely Right to Information and Intervention Towards Participatory Governance in Maharashtra and Re-engineering Grassroots Governance and Electoral Intervention. Based on his study, Dr. Nile has also introduced a certificate course in Right to Information. This is the first ever course that was introduced in the country by any university. He has also convened some conferences and seminars on climate change in South Asia, sustainable development goals, a Dalit perspective. We are greatly honored by your presence, sir, and feel blessed for getting an opportunity to be enriched with your insights on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. I now invite Dr. Murdul Nile to kindly take over. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. S.V. Rathod, Principal of Bhavan Hazari Mulsomani College. Also, Dr. Manjusha Patwardhan, who is an IQAC coordinator for this particular college. the convener of the national webinar, Ravi Gavit sir, Dr. Kiran Jadhav, and Dr. Sandeep Main, who has been, I've been seeing him since morning. He's busy with all the technical stuff. All the teacher colleagues from different colleges, friends, uh, my activist friends who've joined this particular webinar, and also all those who are eager to listen to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. First of all, let me thank the principal of Hazari Malsomani College for having given me this opportunity to speak to you all on, though you had given me a topic, political and economic thoughts of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. I have, in my title, I have slightly, changed the title, and I'm talking on philosophy and pragmatism of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Also, I distinctly, I'm also very grateful. I think none of you all must be knowing this, but then I had done a very small part-time diploma in a institute which is run by Bhavans, which is called as Pranlal Devakaran Nanji Institute of Management, uh, long ago in 1997. uh, and I'm and I must say that this particular diploma in personal management and industrial relations has certainly helped me a lot in my life. So in a way, I can say that somehow I'm associated with the Bhavans family or the Bhavans Hazarimal Somani College, and those were the days when it was really needed that somebody could hold hand. At that point of time, it was this particular institute, which is run under Bhavan's management. I was a part of. I was fortunate to be associated with that during that time. Secondly, when we talk about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, the expanse of uh, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's work is so much that it is certainly very difficult for us to bring a lot of ideas and the way he thought into one lecture. However, this is a small little attempt where I'm attempting to, or where I'm trying to talk to you all on the ideas or pragmatism and philosophy and pragmatism of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar with reference to his political ideas and his economic ideas. With your permission, and of course, thank you, Ravi, for so generous introduction. I don't think I deserve that kind of an introduction, since people who are in the movement, they generally, keep to themselves. Well, with your permission, I will begin my presentation. Are you able to see the presentation? Is the presentation visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Thank you. So I have titled this presentation as Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's philosophy and pragmatism from social democracy to state socialism. That is how I'm looking at this particular presentation. The reason why I thought that I should go on to change the title a bit, because I felt that whatever I was working on is more concerning the pragmatic ideas of Baba Saheb than actually talking about his thoughts, because what I felt is Baba Saheb in a way tried to bring in whatever was with him, whatever he had to the people, and from that point of view, I look at this particular title. When I say philosophy, I certainly believe that Babasaheb Ambedkar was a philosopher, a great philosopher, because what happens is, if you look at his life, okay, right from his childhood up to 1956, when he went in for conversion to Buddhism, we find that there was a lot of philosophy laden thought process that went in uh, that went in to make what Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was. Uh, and if you look at the connectivity that he brings in, especially when he talks about liberty, equality, and fraternity. Now he writes about liberty, equality, and fraternity in one of his first essays. Okay, and he later on sort of tried to culminate it into the philosophy of Buddha, and he tries to say that this particular philosophy comes in from there. So, and he also tries to bring in some kind of democratic perception, and he also links democracy to Buddhism and so on and so forth. So, so what happens is, I mean, when I look at Baba Sahib, I look at him from a great philosopher. And secondly, when I talk in terms of his pragmatism, I feel that Baba Sahib is a very pragmatic leader or son of this particular country who tried to, uh, govern the day-to-day living of people and making of this great nation called India. Okay. Now, when I'm talking about this particular pragmatism, I'm basically talking from the point of view of, let's say, the making of the constitution, that is his role in the drafting committee, and of course a lot of us do not know his contribution to economy. I mean, certain stray things that we all know uh, with regard to RBI and so on and so forth, those kind of things we know. But then what made Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar such a big thinker, that also we need to understand. Thirdly, I mean, while I was preparing for this particular lecture, I came to know that some of the great economists, I don't want to name them, but some of the great economists who were also a part of some finance commissions, okay, they also were unaware of Babasaheb Ambedkar's contribution to economy, and they also felt that probably Babasaheb is more a legal luminary than a economist. So from that particular point of view, I thought that I should gather some kind of data. Well, when I'm talking in this particular webinar, I must tell you all that these are some of the scattered thoughts which I am attempting to bring these particular things together to make this particular lecture. The abstract of this lecture would go somewhat in this particular line, that is, there will be two parts of this particular presentation. The first part, of course, will deal with political ideals of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, his role in constitution, and I'm trying to, look at it in a new perspective, and therefore I call it a manifestation of contract. Okay, when I'm talking about the Constitution of India, I say that it is a manifestation of a contract, that is a social contract. Okay. Further, I'll be talking about what are his views in terms of constitutional values, and how it is important to integrate the social values from constitution to Buddhism. So these are some of the things that I will be dwelling on in my first part of the presentation. In my second part of the presentation, I will be mostly talking with reference to interventions in economic life of country. That is how I'm sort of titling it. And when I'm looking at this particular part of interventions in economic life of country, I will be talking about how his thoughts on public finance, monetary policy, land reforms, these things, how they influenced the entire working of the state. Okay, here mostly, right from, so the connect is from, as I told you in my title itself, it is social democracy to state socialism, how he takes that particular course. And while we're talking on these things, I mean, I think we should also introspect whether these things are really coming true or not. And I feel this is my personal, what should you say, personal interpretation, that I feel that his ideas or his pragmatism, his philosophy is still very relevant. And probably I would not shy of saying that Dr. Baba Ambedkar was the is the most relevant thinker even today, and in near future also he will remain somewhere in the picture. Every well, so this is what I'll be broadly talking about. Now, Dr. Ambedkar was much beyond this particular legal luminary that I already told you all. So, from that particular point of view, you generally find that he was not just a constitutional expert, because that is what we know, or what we know is he generally worked for the downtrodden, he worked for the Dalit community, he worked for the disadvantaged community, and people remember him for such a narrow perspective, from a narrow perspective, where people generally say that they're merely he is merely a leader of Dalits, or so on and so forth. But however, we have to understand one more thing, that he was basically trained sociologist, he was a trained anthropologist and trained philosopher. So therefore, when you're looking at I mean, and when I'm talking about all of these things, of course, in the later part, I'll be telling you as to how many courses he did on economics, sociology, politics, and so on and so forth. But when I'm looking at him from the perspective of sociologists, I would refer to his very classic treatise on annihilation of caste. When you're talking about annihilation of caste, he talks about what is basically how basically the entire caste can be annihilated, or can it be annihilated or not, or can we reach to some kind of an ideal society. Secondly, when you're looking at anthropological side of Dr. Baba Ambedkar, we generally find very brilliant expose on who are Shudras. Okay, he tries to trace the genealogy of the entire social structure of this particular country, and how that particular discrimination was brought in various how that entire discrimination was brought into India. And as I told you, his the I mean, for a lot of people, you find that his best work as a philosopher comes from Buddha and his Dhamma. So, so these are some of the things that we shall. These are some of the things that I think we need to also look at when you look at Dr. Baba Ambedkar. Okay. So, firstly, when you look at constitution as a social contract, uh, we have to understand. I mean, Baba Ambedkar wrote one of the finest. I'm not writing constitution over here in my slide. I'm calling it a social contract. Okay, and I'm saying that this is the finest contract that is in operation. Okay, the reason why I call it the finest contract that is in operation, because the constitution that we have at this point of time, okay, this particular constitution is based on this particular contract. Okay, now when I'm why is this a contract, that is what we need to understand. I hope, I mean, there are a lot of people who are non-political science background also, so I need to bring in what essentially social contract means. Social contract essentially was brought in by some of the great Western political thinkers like Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. And everybody had their own version of contract. They said that people and state are in contract with each other, and as to how people should behave, that is political obligation and so on and so forth, to the state, and how the state should in return should try to work with the people, is generally given in these kind of contracts. So Hobbesian contract is more of a absolutist contract, whereas if you're looking at Locke's contract, social contract, this particular contract is more is more democratic, is more liberal. And you find that here he talks about the citizens also have a right to resist the state. So resistance and these kind of things comes in social contract theory of Locke. And so also in terms of Rousseau, he talks about general will and largest good of the largest number and so on and so forth. So when I'm looking at this particular this particular constitution, especially the preamble of the constitution, the preamble, it declares the constitution as a social contract, because there are some very important words which we need to understand. Some of these words are we the people of India having solemnly resolved to. Okay, so that means it is the contract. We the people, we all as the citizens of this particular country are resolving to see to it that we adopt or we try to resolve, that is we try to come together and we agree upon this particular constitution. That is what is said in first few words. And in the end of this particular preamble, it says we adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this particular constitution, this constitution. Okay, so we have made this particular constitution. We, the people of India, have solemnly resolved to constitute India into whatever socialist, secular, democratic republic. Okay, so we have thought that India should be a secular country. We thought that India should be a democratic country, a republic, or so on and so forth, socialist, secular country. Now, whenever you're looking at all of these particular, what should we say, the goals that India aspires to reach in terms of, be it democracy, be it secularism. Okay, all of these things have come in Baba Saheb's writings at some place or the other. For example, when you're looking at democracy, he writes very much about democracy in maybe states and minorities. He writes about democracy in a lot of his other work also, which I am going to deal with when I'll be talking on coming on to my later slides. Later on, it says that we adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this particular constitution. So therefore, this constitution comes to us in that particular respect. Now, in the modern times, we do not come across these kind of social contracts, but the way the constitution has been put, or the way the preamble has been put, it means that it means that there is a social contract. Secondly, we have to also understand one more thing. It was very difficult for Dr. Baba Ambedkar to bring in these words, we the people of India, because when the discussion on the preamble came in, at that point of time, people were of the opinion, should we invoke the constitution? Invoking, no? So this is we the people of India. It is invoking invoking in whose name? So he says that invoking should be in the name of people. That is what Dr. Baba Ambedkar said. However, there were certain other members of the Constituent Assembly who were of the opinion that it should be in the name of Almighty God, it should be in the name of Parmeshwar, and so on and so forth. So those kind of things people did suggest. I mean, however, Baba Saheb pressed for this particular idea of we the people. Now, the reason why he talks about the idea of we the people is from, again, a very important aspect of political theory, which brings in something like something on consent. Okay, so the fact that the Constituent Assembly was elected and these people were to make the constitution, people who were sitting in the House were elected by the people, it was essentially a representative lot, and therefore the consent of the people and the representation of the people was important. And therefore, that idea of consent comes in, and through that, we generally find that this particular of we the people automatically comes in. So when you're looking at, what happens is, I mean, that is what is philosophy basically, that what is the broadest way of thought process that you can come in, and from that particular point of view, we find that Baba Saheb Ambedkar stands much high than any of the other political thinkers or political personalities at that point of time. So hence, the contract is supreme, and thus the constitutional. So therefore, we need to say that just because the contract comes from a consent, just because we say that the contract comes from the people, we find that it is supreme. So constitution. So therefore, your constitutional supremacy automatically comes in, and the constitutional supremacy comes in, and therefore popular sovereignty, that is, people are sovereign in this particular contract. So therefore, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give a very broad perspective to the preamble, and how we can take constitution, or rather this particular constitution, from a social contract to constitutional supremacy and popular supremacy. So from that particular perspective, we look at this particular contract, this particular constitution. Now, Dr. Ambedkar's philosophical framework can be seen. Okay, it is not entirely a plane of speculative and ethical ideas. Okay, it is not a speculative and ethical ideas. According to him, it has to be essentially related to real human problems. Okay, so unless and until what is basically philosophy? Philosophy, I feel, takes an ideal form of how ideal society would be, or how ideal individual would be in a particular society. The idea of ought to generally comes in philosophy, and therefore we generally find that when we are looking at Dr. Baba Ambedkar, we say that he essentially related to real human problems and issues, because this environment and this is social environment and political philosophy are complementary. So basically, coming from a downtrodden Dalit society, you find that this particular thing always haunted him, that somehow the social environment of the country is not conducive to good of all, and therefore then he brings in this particular idea that social environment and political philosophy are complementary. That means, and maybe we can also say that political philosophy generally breeds on the social environment. So the kind of social environment we have, political philosophy generally influences, and they are also complementary, because if we have a better political philosophy, we can certainly change the social environment. When you talk about political ideas of Ambedkar, I mean, he has talked a lot, but I would like to concentrate more on this particular aspect of social democracy as a means to provide social justice. Okay. The kind of inequality that we find in the society, or the kind of inequality that we've seen in the society, I mean, what is the answer, or what route should we take in order to see to it that people are getting justice, and especially social justice in this particular in this kind of a stratified society? So here, when he talks about democratic form of government, he says that democratic form of government presupposed democratic form of society. Okay, so whenever you're talking about democratic form of government, that means you're talking about it presupposes the democratic society. The formal framework of democracy was of no value and would be misfit if there was no social democracy. So it says that, I mean, whatever the formal framework of this particular democracy is, okay, it will have no value, or it will be misfit if you do not have a social democracy. See, basically, precisely this is what is happening nowadays. We find that we are all going to the polling booths on the day of election, and we are very complacent and satisfied that we are voters of this particular country. Unfortunately, in the current times, these are the two breeds of people whom I would say are looking at democracy from a very, very, very narrow perspective. Okay, one is the people who say that by going to the polling booth, they have completed their national duty. Okay, they have fulfilled their national duty. And second are the taxpayers. Okay, come what may, if there is anything about the country, they say we are the taxpayers and therefore we need to, whatever, those kind of interpretations are generally coming in. So therefore, when you're looking at these kind of people, it is important that your democracy should be more of a social democracy than a political democracy. So he says that political democracy will certainly be successful, but then for that we need to have first a social democracy, and then only our political democracy will be successful. Further, in his annihilation of caste, he also says something else. He says that democracy is not merely a form of government. Okay, it is primarily a mode of associated living. So he says, so again, look at the broad perspective. So that's why I feel that Baba Sahib should be called as a more as a philosopher. So democracy is not merely a form of government; it is primarily a mode of associated living, of conjunction, of conjoint communicated experience. Okay, it is essentially an attitude of respect and reverence towards fellow men. Okay, so we have to just go back and see whether these kind of things do happen even now. So when you look at democracy as merely of, I mean, we are looking at as democracy as merely a form of government. So we say we are very complacent, we are very happy that after every 5 years we have elections. But then is the is popular sovereignty, is people's consent really being a part of this entire discourse of democracy? So further, as I said, it is primarily a mode of associated living, of conjoint communicated experience. Okay, so from that particular perspective, you have to look at it, and essentially an attitude and respect towards reverence towards fellow men. So no matter what and who, but then these kind of fellow men should be respected, come what may, which caste, religion, whatever it may be. So from that particular perspective, we have to look at democracy, and this is how Dr. Baba Ambedkar's ideas on democracy comes in. Now, he talks about the manifestation of this particular social democracy through the triology that we can talk about, that is liberty, equality, and fraternity. So when you're talking about liberty, equality, and fraternity, these are the defining values of social democracy. He says that these are the defining values. So how do you define a social democracy? So a democracy where you have liberty, equality, and fraternity are considered to be defining values. Okay, this is seen in the preamble of the Constitution, where if I go a bit long, I can say he attempts to make these values as social values. Okay, than keeping them as political values. So he wants to make these particular values as social values. Though we have, liberty of thought, uh, equality, social, economic, political, fraternity, dignity, all these kind of words are laid in, all these words are there in our Constitution. But then unless and until we are able to, we don't want to keep them only political values. What is essential is that these values should percolate down into the society to make them a social value. Well, to give you an example, I mean, during this entire Corona lockdown in the US, especially, we all know that in the US Constitution, there is a very important the preamble of the Constitution says that right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, that is what the Constitution of US talks about. Okay, liberty as a value is so very dear to the Americans that it is very difficult for us to forget, for them to forget this particular value at any given point. So therefore, when you're looking at this particular value, what has happened is now during this Corona, people came out with guns. They felt probably their liberty will be at stake, and therefore they came out with guns, saying that no, come what may, but uh, we would like to go out. We don't need that kind of lockdown and so on and so forth. Of course, I mean, this is not the time to say that, but then what I mean to say is that the value of liberty is so very much, intertwined with the with the social process of that particular country, that it becomes difficult for us to stay away from these particular values. Now, Baba Saheb, in a way, attempts to do that. And he says that he does not want to keep these particular values as political values, but then these values should go seep deep into the social fabric of the country and become social values. Thus, people actually, talking about these kind of values. He aspires for the percolation of these values through the political system. Okay, he says that they will come through the political system, but then later on, he finds that they do not form the edifice of the social system. So these values like liberty, equality, fraternity, these are all values which came from, which are Western values. Okay, I beg to say this, that unfortunately these particular values did not form the core of Indian social, quote unquote, uh, uh, cultural narrative of India. Okay, so therefore what happens is these particular values, he felt that these cannot form the basic edifice of the social system, and therefore he enroots these values through Buddhism. So that's what I tried to tell you right in the beginning, that when I'm looking at these values, how I'm looking at these values is these values came right in the beginning, somewhere, while he was studying. He tried to carry those things into the constitution, the preamble, and he also replicates these particular values in the Buddha and his Dhamma. So he philosophizes. He is working on those particular, there are a lot of questions, on these particular values, when people say that was he influenced by the French Revolution, and because of which these particular values came. But then later on, towards the end of his life, he says that no, these particular values he got from his master Buddha. Okay, and so he talks about the ideal society to be ideal society to come on these lines. Yeah. So while we talk about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's political ideas, I think that most of his political ideas are, when I'm saying that, I'm taking these three speeches because these speeches tell us the pragmatism of political ideas of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and these particular speeches. Now here on the 17th of December 1946, we generally find that Babasaheb basically talked about unity, because why I'm talking about unity again is very important, because it is always considered that, or there's a big question whether Babasaheb actually uh, he was not a national leader. That is what people generally say, and people generally say that his contribution uh, to these kind of things, unity and fraternity and these kind of things, is unity especially is not much. So therefore I thought that I should bring in this particular idea. In fact, this is very eloquently and very systematically given in a book by Akash Singh Rathod on his preamble, but then I just tried to take the speeches from that. Uh, so here he talks about unity, and he says Dr. Babasaheb implored the Constituent Assembly, was it was very absolutely essential that I quote, when deciding the destinies of nations, I know today we are divided. We are a group of warring camps, and I confess that I am probably one of the leaders of such camp. With all the outcasts and creeds, I have not the slightest hesitation that we shall, in some form, be united people. Okay, so this is one of his first speeches after the Constituent Assembly, during the Constituent Assembly, and this was a very extempore speech that he comes out with. Okay, on unity. Further, when he's talking about this particular unity, he later on he says that so far as the ultimate goal is concerned, okay, of unity, okay, I think none of us have any apprehension, none of us have any doubt or difficulty is not about ultimate future. Okay, our difficulty is how to make heterogeneous mass that we have today take a decision in common and march on the cooperative way that lead us to unity. Okay, so he's again talking about that particular unity, and he cautions the country, or he knows what is the basic fabric of the country, how country is so very stratified, how country is so very, divided, heterogeneous country, and how do we get the entire all the people together. It would be an act of great statesmanship for the majority party even to make concessions to prejudice of people who are not prepared to march together. And it is for them that I propose to make this appeal. Let us leave aside slogans, let us make concessions to prejudices of our opponents, bring them in so far as they are willing to join with us on marching upon the road, which I said, if I was walking enough, must necessarily lead us to unity. So again, see, look at the profound, statesmanship of Dr. Baba Ambedkar. Unfortunately, okay, after maybe we can say after today we do not get statesmen. Okay, today we have all politicians. Now here, when he's talking about, he is willing to give anything and everything to this particular cooperative for the unity and integrity of this particular country, and therefore he very rightly said that give whatever concessions, okay, to the prejudices of these particular people, and try to bring them in the mainstream so that the country looks united. Another speech that he delivered was on the 4th of November 1948. And this speech, again, is important from the point of now here, if you look at this particular speech, the speech tries to again bring in democracy, parliamentarianism, and Buddhism together. And this is again, this was spoken in the Constituent Assembly on 25th November 1940. 9. I mean, this was spoken on 4th November, but then compiled in this particular volume. So it says that it is not that India did not know what is democracy. There was a time when India was studded with republics. It is not that India did not know parliament and parliamentary procedures. A study of Buddhist Bhikshuk Sangha discloses that not only there were parliaments for the sanghas were nothing but parliaments. So he says that if the student of history would very well know that during those times, okay, you had some kings like Kanishka and all. They had different parliaments or different sessions of Buddhist conferences which they had organized. So those kind of parliaments. So for the sanghas were nothing but the parliaments. But the Sanghas knew and observed all the rules of parliamentary procedures known to modern times, rules regarding motions, resolutions, quorum, whip, counting of votes. The democratic system in India lost. Okay, so this is what he says in his another speech. And then he tries to say, can we presume such a diffusion of constitutional morality? So he's also talking about constitutional morality. What essentially do we mean, and where do we want to take this particular constitutional morality? Now, he says that that constitutional morality is nothing, is not a natural sentiment. Okay, it is not a natural sentiment. It has to be cultivated. Okay, so I think that the politicians of today should try and understand what constitutional morality means. They should try and understand what is that particular, how it can be cultivated. Okay, he further says we must realize that our people have yet to earn it. Okay, so he says this in 1950s, in 1949 rather. Okay, democracy in India is only a top dressing of an Indian soil, which essentially is very undemocratic. So democracy is just a topsoil, but the kind of society, the core of this particular whole social structure and political structure of the country is such that deep beneath, it's a very undemocratic system, and therefore this particular undemocratic system cannot breed a different kind of a society with a constitutional morality and so on and so forth. This is a very important speech that he gives on the eve of the submission on 25th November 1949. Okay, when he's talking about the contradictions that he's talking about in the country. And in this particular speech, he is in a way warning the people of India. He's warning the politicians of India. And he's saying that now that the constitution is ready, we need to look at this particular constitution in a different perspective altogether. So on his 25th November 1949, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we'll have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. So in politics, of course, I mean, every person will be equal to each other because same vote, same value, one vote, one value kind of thing. A one man, one vote, one value kind of thing. So those kind of things will have political equality, but then social and economic inequality will not have. In politics, we'll be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, and one value, one vote, one value. In social, in social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structures, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. But he says that in our social and economic life, we shall, and by reason of our social and economic structures, okay, the kind of social and economic structures that we have, will continue to deny this particular value to that individual who is at the last strata, who is at the lower strata. Okay, he says that how long shall we continue to live of these contradictions? How long shall we continue to deny equality to our social and in our social and economic sphere? If we continue to deny for long, it will do so by putting our democracy to a prill. We must remove these contradictions at the earliest moment, or else those who suffer from equality will blow up the structures. Political democracy, which is an assembly of which this assembly has laboriously built. So he's talking about these kind of structures. He's trying to, in a way, make people aware of where this particular country is leading, or where we are going to. In the same speech later on, he says, I remember the days when politically minded Indians resented the expression, the people of India. Remember, I spoke to you about the invocation of the constitution, when people wanted to say that should we use the people of India, or should we use something else, some other expression. So from that particular point of view, I remember the days when politically minded Indians resented the expression of people of India. They preferred the expression, the Indian nation. I am of the opinion that in believing that we are nation, we are cherishing a great delusion. How can people divided into several thousands of castes be nation? Okay, so he says that, I mean, we are so very divided. It is difficult that we can be called as a nation. We are small little groups. So these small little groups cannot be called as nation. The sooner we realize that we are not as yet a nation in the social and psychological sense of the word, the better for us. Okay, so he's again sort of trying to caution us. For then only we shall realize the necessity of becoming a nation, and seriously think of ways and means of realizing the goal. Okay, so unless and until we shirk, or unless and until we give up some of these things, we cannot we cannot realize this particular goal of nation. The realization of this goal is going to be difficult in India. There are castes, he says very, very clearly. There are castes, and therefore it is very difficult for us to become a nation. The castes are anti-national in the first place because they bring about separation in social life. So he says that the castes are anti-social because, anti-national because they bring in separation, and they are anti-national also because they generate jealousy and antipathy between caste and caste. But we must overcome these difficulties if we wish to become a nation in reality. Our fraternity can be a fact only when there is a nation. Okay, so he says that we may precisely this word, liberty, equality cannot function or cannot be brought into the society if supposing say, a fraternity cannot be brought into society if we are not able to bring in liberty and equality into society. Without fraternity, equality, and liberty will be no deeper than the coats of paints. Okay, so that is what he has to say in this. In the states and minorities, now he talks about the minorities also. In states and minorities, he says that uh, unfortunately for the minorities in India, Indian nationalism has developed a new doctrine which may be called as divine right of the majority rule. Okay, very true in today's circumstances. Okay, unfortunately for the minorities in India, Indian nationalism has developed a new doctrine which may be called the divine right of the majority to rule the minorities according to the wishes of majority. Okay, so whatever they do is fine. Any claim for sharing of power by the minority is called communalism, while the monopolizing of whole power by the majority is called nationalism. Okay, so look at the way he's trying to talk. Okay, so and if you look at this particular read this particular statement very specifically, we find that, I mean, have we really overcome this particular idea? And therefore, when I said that Dr. Ambedkar remains perpetually a very, very important thinker, very, very important, and he's a you can just talk about a lot of anything, and you find that there is some kind of contribution that Baba Sahib Ambedkar has made to whichever stone that he touched. Okay, so basically, from this particular point of view, if you look at it, his relevance remains very constant, and he is always has always said something on those kind of problems, social as well as economic and political problems that India has been facing right from the beginning. I'm not looking at Buddhism from the from metaphysical or philosophical point of view. I'm looking at Buddhism also from a very pragmatic perspective, because here I say that no doubt it was important that Ambedkar gave different identity to Dalits and downtrodden, uh, which he had tried right from the Southborough Committee. So, since 1919, 1928, that is Salmon Commission, 1919 Southborough Committee or Montague Chelmsford reforms, and and later on, if you look at some of the communal award, that is Pune Pact and so on and so forth. So every time since 1919, he is struggling to get that particular identity for the Dalits. I mean, and you all know the kind of conflict that came in with Gandhi. Gandhi claimed that he is the leader of. I mean, if you read that some of his volumes, in that particular volume, he has written certain things where he says that Gandhi claimed that he is the leader of the Dalits and the downtrodden. Okay, whereas and he said that Dalits and downtrodden also are from the Hindu fold, and he said that no, he tries to, he says that no, you cannot say that you are the leader since you have really not done much for those particular people. You don't understand the plight of those particular people, and therefore, so there is a constant, strive, fight with himself to try to give a different identity to these particular people coming from a particular community, that is the disadvantaged community, Dalit community, and so on and so forth. So we have to look at Buddhism from a very different concept. This is not Baoseb saying, but then today when I look at Buddhism, I look at Buddhism from the perspective of rationality, reformation, and reason. Okay, why I'm looking at it from rationality, reformation, and reason is because certainly Buddhism does not talk about that particular graded inequality. Buddhism does not talk in terms of stratification of the society, and therefore, and it also attempts to reform the society. So therefore, rationality, reformation, and reason, that is, people should try and understand why do they do certain things which they are doing. So from that particular perspective, we are looking at Buddhism from these a new perspective. All the three have different meanings, and thus Buddhism becomes a means of emancipation, and therefore Dr. Ambedkar talks from this. He wants Buddhism to become a means of emancipation, because that would certainly give a more equal society. Later, now this actually I've taken from Christophe Jeffilow's expose on Buddhism. He says that Buddhism, then why Buddhism? So he says again, it connects it to democracy, and he says that for democracy, and if political commitments cannot result in social reforms. Now this is very important. Okay, if political commitments of the state, they do not result into social reform, the only way to promote would be democracy. Okay, by maybe Buddhism. Okay, and therefore whatever you're not able to get from a real democracy, maybe Buddhism can give that. He also says that it is an egalitarian creed, and he says that it endows Dalits with alternative and non-Hindu identity. So this is what I had on Baba Ambedkar's thoughts on polity, or his pragmatism on polity and political philosophy. Now I'll be dwelling a bit on economic pragmatism. Now, since I don't belong to economic discipline of economics, so please pardon me if I go somewhere wrong. Though I've tried to go through the literature and double checked some details, but then still pardon me if supposing say I go wrong anywhere. In Columbia University, we would take his journey of economics from Columbia University in 1913. When he reached Columbia, he studied these courses. Now, if you look at the amount of courses that he did in economics and sociology and history and philosophy, I mean, one would really go mad. Okay, so in 1913 summer, he did 2 courses in economics, 1 in sociology. 1914 entire year, he did 13 economics courses, 3 courses in sociology, 1 in history. In summer of 1914, again 2 in economics, 1 in sociology. In 1914-15, he did 9 courses in economics, 7 in history, 2 in sociology, and 2 in politics. In 1915-16, he did history, philosophy, and anthropology, 4 paper each, and politics. So actually, if you look at the training that he got in America, in Columbia University, now this was at the age of 22, I guess, when he went there. And in this particular age, you find that he was studying so many different kind of work. His important research work at Columbia include these 2. One is Provincial Finance in British India, which was his PhD thesis in Columbia University. And later on, he also spoke on something, and later on, he also wrote on Administration and Finance of East India Company for his MA course. Or before that, he did his MA. For his MA, he wrote a small essay, about 40 pages essay on Administration and Finance of East India Company. London School of Economics, when he went to, he took admission for his MSc in economics, and his teacher had recommended him for the MSc course, and he wanted to go to London, and he wanted to look out for some more details on the British finance in India, because that was the place where he wanted to go. At the same time, he also wanted to go to different places in Europe, for example, Bonn University in Germany, and so on and so forth. He did go there also for a brief, but then due to problems of finances, he had to come back. His doctoral thesis is a very brilliant work called as The Indian Rupee, which was later on published in 1923 as The Problem of Rupee, Its Origin and Its Solution. And this was published in London by Pierce King and Sons in 1923. So this was his work that came from London School of Economics. The fact that I was talking about what courses he studied and what all did he do in London and US, the basic reason is that he was an economist. Okay, that is what I wanted to press for, and let us not look at it from a very narrow lens of a Dalit leader or maybe only a constitutionalist and so on and so forth. Yeah. So let us look at his work and let us try and understand what comes in. So this particular paper, The Problem of Rupee, basically, and its origin and its solution, it basically talks about uh, it has two parts. So the first part basically deals with the historical analysis of the British from 1835 onwards almost up to 1916, 1920. Okay, and he tries to analyze as to what went wrong. What he says basically is the gold and we all know what kind of currencies that we had in the country, and the currencies basically were gold or silver. At different times these different kind of currencies went on changing. Whenever you had abundant silver, you found that the gold coins lost its values and so on and so forth. But what was more important, I'll just touch upon those things. So East India Company brought in these bimetallism act, through which both the currencies can be used. But in 1853, East India Company stopped receiving gold coins and tried to demonetize gold, leading to liquidity crisis. Okay, so when you're looking at these some of these kind of things, you generally find that there are some serious problems. Okay, 1893, again, minting of Indian rupee was adopted as a legal tender. What was There was one very important thing that came in 1898 to 1916. Gold exchange standards were adopted, and emphasis was given on external stability and exchange stability. Okay, so this becomes very important: external stability and exchange stability, because in these two things, that is now here the entire thing revolves around as to what happens. So Bowser felt that whatever is happening or whatever the East India Company was doing, it is basically benefiting the East India Company, and the local people, poor people, are actually not getting benefited due to all these kind of exchange standards and all. So in 1914-15, exchange standard rate got weak, and India was running out of gold remittances, gold to pay back remittances. Now, leading to increase in demand of rupee, more currency was flushed into the economy, leading to inflation. I mean, this is a basic economics that everybody knows. I mean, inflation. So that is what Bosab said. So what whenever this particular problem, the intervention of Dr. Bose Ambedkar. In this thesis, he categorically states that the
Hello, sir. Are you disconnected?
I think so. Dear participants, please bear with us. I think Dr. Ney sir has got disconnected, some connectivity issue. We hope he joins soon.
I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes, sir. Now you are audible.
Okay.
But your screen is not seen, sir.
One second. There was some problem.
Yes, sir.
Automatically went off.
Okay, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Now we can see it. Yeah.
Sure. So basically, when you're looking at this particular problem of rupee in the second part, you find that Dr. Baba Ambedkar, he talks about the importance that was, unnecessarily importance was given to the exchange rate stability instead of price stability. He said that people should work on price stability and not on exchange stability, because exchange stability is going to benefit the traders, okay, and the people, that is the general common people, are not going to benefit out of this. So the exchange rate stability will benefit only the trading class. He was against the concept of print money, okay, to manipulate the currency to keep at par with the gold value. So that is what was happening, and that is precisely what he said that he should not be done. He was not in favor of giving power to the government to expand money supply. He was of the opinion that the government should not have any role in regulating the money supply. Okay. Now again, a very introspective and a very important thing that we had recently experienced, demonetization, or even now, if the government. The point that I want to make over here is, like, RBI is very autonomous body. Okay, the government interference with RBI is not warranted, and unfortunately, this particular thing should be was talked by Dr. Baba Ambedkar then. So he was against the favor of giving any power to the government to expand the money supply without expanding the production of goods and services. He says you expand the goods and services. Now, see, in this particular COVID and coronavirus era, we find that this particular interpretation of Dr. Baba Ambedkar becomes all the more important. Okay, there have been different kind of scholars, thinkers, right, and Nobel laureates, of course. I mean, I would request you all to go and see some of the interviews of Raghuram Rajan, then Abhijit Banerjee, and I'm not able to get the name right now. But then once I come across, I'll certainly tell you. Uh, Jayati Ghosh from JNU, who talking about, you should give money in the hands of people. Okay, if you give money in the hands of people, what will happen is people will start buying stuff. People will, and the money and the economy will start functioning. That is what is the idea that these economists are talking about, and this Baba Saheb has spoken in 1917 to 1920, 23. So if you look at these kind of things, this is a super shot that people generally really do not know as to what actually has to be or what Dr. Baba Ambedkar has spoken on economics. Okay, now this is again a very important thing. In 1909, John Maynard Keynes, he came to India. I mean, if you look at his background, Keynes, what we all know, Keynesian economics today. So Keynes had joined he was basically from Cambridge, and he came to India as a clerk, but then he did not find whatever. I mean, he felt that something is wrong, and he felt that he should continue with his studies, and therefore he again went back to his country. At that point, in 1909, Keynes, he generally came up with this particular idea of Ambedkar advocated gold standard and Keynes prescribed gold exchange standard. So,
Alina.
hello.
Huh.
Yeah. So
Huh.
basically,
एक दोन तीनच
Keynes actually prescribed gold exchange standard in his brilliant book, okay, which is even now available, called as the Indian Currency and Finance, published in the year 1909. Now, here Ambedkar argues with him. He argued in favor of gold standard. He says that it should not be gold exchange standard, but it should be gold standard. Why? Because in this system of supply of currency cannot be so easily made, and as such, better ensures the stability of prices, and so that the poor sections would get some kind of relief. Though Ambedkar's suggestion was not taken up by the imperial government, his intention of protecting the interest of poor was very much clear. Okay, So to explain this particular debate further, okay, we need to understand what basically he talks about. So he says that what is an ideal currency system? He says that there are two choices, either a gold standard or gold exchange standard. Then he says gold coins are used as medium of exchange in gold standard. Okay, so gold coins are used as medium of exchange in gold standard, and gold exchange standard paper currency is used as a medium of exchange. Okay, that is supported by certain amount of gold held by the central bank, that is RBI. So Keynes was of the view that gold exchange standard is advantageous system, okay, and it is also flexible. But Dr. Ambedkar says that this flexibility is double-edged weapon. That is, if supposing say if we have an irresponsible government, it may issue far too much money. Okay, he says that if we do not have a responsible government, what they will do is they will, in return of this particular gold exchange standard, what they will do is they'll keep printing money, and this will be a reason of inflation. Hence, it is not advantageous to the poor. So this is what he said. Now, this particular thing is also is also reflected this particular disagreement is also reflected in in this particular work of the forward that was written by his teacher Cannon. Okay, and he also does not agree with this particular perception of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. But then later on, when you find today, you find that this is what people have been doing in India. Further, the evolution of public finance in British India. This was another a very important book that came in, and this book essentially talks about how the entire financial systems between the center and state should function. Okay, so it is this is what basically came in his book on public finance. Okay, here he says that after 1858, it was noticed that imperial government was a lawmaker and did not administer the country, whereas provincial government, who administered the country, did not have the power to make laws. So lawmaker, and so there was a dichotomy, there was a problem that either you can make a law or you cannot make a law. Those kind of things were happening. Okay, so then provincial government used to make a budget, and imperial governments had the right to finance these budgets. Okay, practically making provincial government did not have any power to raise its own revenue. So then he talks about then there are some phases as to how the entire how the entire economic system worked, and he says that provincial finances. So in the third phase, now he tries to talk about the all phases. I would just talk about the third phase, in which provincial finances, the budget was the in the third phase, the provincial finance budget was to be shared revenue. That is, they would work on center-state financial relations are based on this particular book, and the idea of sharing of tax receipt is a part of this. So therefore, what finance commissions that we're talking about today, okay, where the finance commission are talking about distributing the tax receipts between different countries, between different states and the center, whatever money is coming, how to divide that particular revenue and money was talked during those times by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and we are following that particular finance commission even now. Now, this particular finance commission is a part of constitution. Okay, that also comes from what Babasaheb had written in his book. So what I'm trying to say is that whatever Babasaheb was writing right in the beginning, he's trying to bring it into the constitution, and therefore this particular my idea of that particular contract. Remember when I was talking about, I gave a lot of time to talk about this particular contract. So this particular contract, how that contract is manifesting, okay, through the constitution, that is what we are in a way trying to understand over here. I'll go a bit fast now because I think we've already taken a lot of time. Then we have Hilton Young Commission, which came in 1926, and this particular commission was supposed to look at what will happen, how to establish a central bank, that is the Reserve Bank of India. However, this particular bank was established only in 1935. 1927, the committee submitted its report, but unfortunately, this particular committee, the bank was established a little later. There's a very important article on some kind of what were the problems in establishing RBI. Is a article that is in EPW. If you just search for it on JSTOR, you'll easily get it. What were the problems? But then Ambedkar here also tried to interfere, and he said that we should have an independent Reserve Bank of India. So that is what he talked about. Another three very important. Now, there is what he contributed to agriculture is the abolition of Khodi system, abolition of Mahar Watans, and small holdings. These are the three important work that he's talking again about. Now, the abolition of Khodi system, as you all know, we all stay in the Konkan region. Mumbai is a part of Konkan region. So Khodi system was one of the very important kind of zamindari system that was practiced in parts of Raigad, that is Kolaba, and Ratnagiri districts. So here you find Babasaheb went there and saw to it that this particular thing is abolished. Not only organizing people against the Khotis, but then these were the three important bills that he brought in. One is Khoti system, abolition of Khoti system in 1949, Mahar Watan, and introduction of Bombay Moneylenders Bill in 1930s. These are some of the things that he again brought in. On 17 September 1937, a historic bill of abolition of this particular Khoti system was brought in. Now, Mahar Vatan is another a very important kind of a structure that existed. This particular basic structure is, British government would give a plot of land to the Mahar community, and this particular Mahar community will produce on that particular land. But it was sort of a bonded labor, and they will be easy for any beck and call of the British Sarkar. So he was not in favor of this particular Mahar Watans, and therefore he also worked against that. And labor reforms, of course, we know that Babasaheb Ambedkar, there were a lot of strikes that were happening in India during that time, and especially in the textile mill strikes. So Babasaheb was never in favor of these kind of strikes. He always said that no, I mean there should not be strike, because strike means a lot of retention. People would be driven away from work and so on and so forth. So therefore, was not in favor of that. However, in 1938, there was this particular Black Act that came in which they wanted to brought in Bombay Presidency. They wanted to abolish the right to strike, for which then Babasaheb came out and he started talking against the government, and he said that there's nothing doing. It is a fundamental right of the individual to go on strike. And in 1936, he established the Independent Labour Party. He said when an Independent Labour Party was organized, again, a very important thing, just if you understand why he came up with an Independent Labour Party, he said Independent Labour Party is important because the rights of the workers can be dealt with by the trade unionists. But who will talk about the human rights of these particular? And therefore, you need a political party. So in India, the first country to think about the workers' insurance is also our country. Then he was a part of the Viceroy's Executive Council, where he had a portfolio of labor and employment, power, water management, and public works department. We find that a lot of work has been done. Employment exchange, skill development, tripartite agreement. These are some of the things that he brought in. Water management, Damodar Valley project. He also wanted to replicate the Tennessee Valley project. He also invited the engineer of Tennessee Valley to do the same kind of work for Damodar Valley. And of course, the river linking project, which came during the previous BJP government, during Atal Bihari Vajpayee. This particular thing was taken up very much, river linking project. But unfortunately, Babasaheb is never remembered for these kind of things. And of course, with regard to electricity, that is power and water, he comes up with Central Water Commission, and he comes up with Central Electricity Board. These were established by Babasaheb. One of the most painful thing that Babasaheb Ambedkar undergone is the planning ministry. He was very much interested in planning. See, because again, from this we can understand that what pragmatism is. Okay, whatever he wrote came in constitution. Whatever constitution he was trying to, the constitution is a living document basically. So it has a manifestation role. So therefore, whenever this particular constitution opens up, okay, we have to have certain other acts and policies which go in consonance with the constitution. So therefore, he wanted a planning ministry. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and he had to resign on the issue of Hindu Code Bill finally from the government. And finally, he talks about state socialism, where he says that heavy industry should be owned by the state, and small industry should be owned by the private entrepreneurs, by which by which we'll be able to bring in some kind of state socialism. So this is what I have. I thank you all for this opportunity, and I'll be happy to take some questions, if at all there are any.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your views on Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. I'm sure everybody present here would agree that it is very difficult, in fact, to cover Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's remarkable contribution in a very short period of time, in short span. But still, you have been successful in highlighting the significance of his political and economic viewpoints. I feel truly enriched, in fact, with your presentation. Thank you so much for sir.
Offline with Google Drive.
तो दिला तो तकरीक ले अगर कोई तारीफ क्या अगर करेगा
Over to Varsha ma'am. I request Varsha ma'am, Dr. Varsha Malla and Reena Patil to proceed with the question and answer session.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kiran Jadhav. A very good afternoon to one and all. Myself, Dr. Varsha Malla, along with Mrs. Reena Patel, will now be taking some questions from both the platforms, Zoom as well as YouTube Live. Sir, the first contribution in women empowerment.
Please unmute Dr. Murali.
Yeah. So, see the best contribution, I would say, I mean, there cannot be a bigger contribution of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar to women, is first of all, as I closed on my second last slide, I said that he wanted to bring in the Hindu Code Bill, according to which it would have been a revolutionary bill in the Indian social sphere, because the kind of secondary treatment that women get, they would have come out of this. That is one. Two, there's one very important important meeting that Baba Sahib had organized with the sex workers in Grant Road. Okay, so and he urged them to leave this kind of profession, because this profession is of slavery, discrimination, and such kind of things. So therefore, he was of the opinion that those kind of things should be done, and he on his own had taken up these kind of meetings. And I don't think that any leader so far in the Indian history has taken the meetings of such kind of population in a place wherever in the world, I think. Yeah. So that is what his contribution is, I would say.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Mrs. Reena Patel. So, absolutely, your session was very crystal clear, and that's why we really don't have many queries here. But I have one more question for you, sir. The question is, how was Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar responsible in setting up the RBI?
RPI. No, see, we have to understand three things. Like, initially in 1939, we generally find this particular thing came up, Labour Party, Independent Labour Party. Followed by that, Scheduled Caste Federation came in. Okay. Now, we have to also understand one more thing, which is very important. So, see, Babasaheb Ambedkar was not recognized much as an economist, because after coming to India, he gave up economics because he was in the thick and thin of the entire socio-political movement, social movement rather, before. And then later on, towards the end, after 1935-37, we find that he comes into political party mode. Now, see, we have to understand that he had been fighting for the political rights of individuals of all community, including the Dalits. Another thing that I talked about is about identity. Okay, and this particular identity, in order to what do you say? In order to bring out that particular, in order to assert, you need to have some kind of identity. And therefore, when you found that the Labour Party was disbanded after some time. Scheduled Caste Federation was also a political party that was also disbanded, and then he came on for Republican Party of India. But then, and that was purely on political grounds. In fact, there was one very great success that Independent Labour Party received after in 1940 elections, if I'm not wrong. Okay, this particular party got about 15 seats in the provincial council, in the provincial assembly, provincial government. So council, sorry. So therefore, when you look at his idea, so he got a good success on political parties, and therefore he wanted a more stronger political party. That's how later on, looking at the socio-political aspects of the state, we generally find that new political parties and finally RPI came in. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir, for answering all the queries. Over to you, Dr. Kiran Jadhav, sir.
Hello.
Yeah.
Kiran sir, are you there? I think maybe there's some connectivity issue. Okay, so we have almost come to the end of this program. Before we formally end the program, there is one important announcement for all the participants. The feedback link is already shared on the chat box of Zoom as well as on YouTube link. We will also be posting the feedback link on all the WhatsApp groups for this program. The participants have to fill in the feedback link, after which the certificates will be mailed to their individual email IDs provided. Now, may I request Dr. Rupa Deshmukhya to propose vote of thanks. Over to you, Rupa. Hello, Rupa, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, Rupa.
Hello. Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Manjusha Patwardhan. Good afternoon, one and all. It is my privilege to propose vote of thanks on behalf of Bhavan's Hazarimal Somani College of Arts and Science and Jairamdas Patel College of Commerce and Management Studies. I, Dr. Rupa Somnath Deshmukhya, extend my heartfelt gratitude to all those who have made this webinar possible. At the outset, my earnest thankfulness to our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Mridul Nile, for an extremely enriching and enlightening session. Thank you, sir, for your insights on Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's contribution to the economic and political spaces which are intertwined with our lives and have contributed immensely in giving an impetus to progressive ideas, not only within our country, but also to the world. Dr. Ambedkar was a visionary par excellence, and his essential message of unity, political and social justice, and his pragmatic philosophy have been comprehensively covered through your presentation. Thank you, sir, for your excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I would also like to express my gratitude to the management of our college for granting us the permission to conduct this webinar. I take this opportunity to sincerely thank our principal, Professor Dr. S.V. Rathod, for his motivation and encouragement to organize such educational activities and events. My thanks are due to the IQAC coordinator, Dr. Manjusha Patwardhan, for her tireless efforts and commitment towards the betterment of our college. I thank the IQAC committee members, namely Dr. Varsha Malha, Dr. Kiran Jadhav, and Ms. Reena Patel for their unconditional support. I would also like to thank active members of our alumni, Ms. Sarika Atle and Rotarian Shri Rupen Doshi, who guide and assist us in executing quality initiatives for the betterment of our institution. I thank the coordinator of this event, Mr. Ravidas Gavit, for his support. My thanks are due to our technical team, Dr. Sandeep Mind and our librarian, Ms. Bindu, who have diligently worked towards organizing this webinar. Finally, I wish to place on record my deep appreciation towards all the participants whose overwhelming response has truly moved us. We look forward to your presence in the upcoming webinars as well. Thank you all. Stay home, stay safe. May I now request everyone to kindly rise for the national anthem.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
So we'll leave.
Yeah, we have come to the end of the program, so all the participants are requested to leave.